Hello students, welcome to today's video lesson where we shall discuss the chapter Civilizing the Native, Educating the Nation. How did the British try to civilize the Indians? How was the education system in India affected? Let us find out in our discussion today. The intention of the British was not only to capture territories in India. They also wished to bring about a cultural change by transforming the values and customs of the people living in the country. In their words, their motive was civilizing the natives. And a good way to do that was by targeting the educational structures prevalent in the country at that point of time.
In the later half of the 18th century, a group of British officials became highly interested with the discovery and study of ancient Indian heritage and mastering Indian languages. People like William Jones, Henry Colebrook, and Nathaniel Halhed shared the same interests and hence collaborated to form the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784, as well as starting a journal titled Asiatic Researches. Over time, Jones and Colebrook became the face of a particular approach of the British towards India. The shared belief of the people behind this movement, known as Orientalism, was that Indian civilization had a rich past that had disappeared, and to better understand and rediscover India, it was necessary to understand the lost glories of our culture.
The British hoped that this process would endear themselves to the Indians and they would become the guardian as well as the master of Indian culture and the Indians. Thus, with the hope of winning the gratitude of the common people of India, the British started promoting education in Sanskrit and Persian rather than English. With that objective, the Calcutta Madrasa was set up in 1781 and the Hindu College came up in Banaras in 1791. A change in outlook took place from the beginning of the 19th century when the British began disapproving the Orientalist way of learning by citing their wrong, light-hearted and unscientific nature.
One of the leading voices against Orientalist thought was James Mill, who argued that Indians should be trained in the scientific and technical advances coming from the West, which was far more useful and practical than learning sacred texts and poetry of the East or Orient. The critique got sharper in the 1830s when Thomas Babington Macaulay called India an uncivilized country. He was a staunch critic of Orientalism. He pushed for the introduction of English education in India and wrote a minute concerning the education system of India.
This influential minute was behind the passing of the English Education Act of 1835 that made the medium of instruction English in higher educational institutions and cut off the backing of Orientalist centers of learning. The Court of Directors of the East India Company in London sent an educational dispatch to the Governor-General in India. It was issued by Charles Wood and came to be known as the Wood's Dispatch. The Wood's Dispatch of 1854 outlined the educational policy that the British had to follow henceforth. It stressed on the commercial and economic benefits Western education would bring to the people of India, thus making it a suitable market for the empire and also changing the tastes and values of the natives to suit the interests of the British. It also suggested that European learning would improve the moral character of the Indians and supply the company with truthful and honest civil servants. Thus, following the dispatch, several measures were introduced by the British.
Meanwhile, the missionaries strongly criticized the argument for practical education and attempted to improve the moral character of the people. They believed that morality could be improved only through Christian education. Both the British government and the East India Company were reluctant to directly support the Christian missionaries in India, as they felt it would provoke reactions from the locals and make them suspicious of British motives. Moreover, after the revolt of 1857, they felt that it would hurt the religious and cultural sentiments of the locals.
In order to assess the conditions of primary education, the company hired the services of a Scottish missionary named William Adam, who in the 1830s toured the districts of Bengal and Bihar and presented a report based on his experiences. How was the education system prevalent in those times? What changes were made in that system? We shall find out in the next part of our video lesson. See you in part 2 of this chapter.